Imagine waking up one day to find your home flooded, not by a storm, but by a regular high tide. This is not a distant dystopia, but a reality for many coastal communities. Picture this. It's a sunny day, but the streets are awash with salt water. This is no longer an anomaly, instead, it's becoming the norm. Rising sea levels are causing an increase in these sunny day floods, turning high tide into a potential disaster. Climate change is the invisible hand behind the curtain, pulling the strings. As the earth warms, ice melts, and the sea rises, flooding events are becoming more frequent and more severe. For those living along coastlines, a flood advisory is more than a weather update. It's a life-altering alert. It's a stark reminder that their world is changing, and that adaptation is no longer a choice, but a necessity. So, what exactly is a coastal flood advisory, and why should it concern you? Well, let's start with the basics. A coastal flood advisory is a formal alert issued by weather and environmental authorities when minor, yet potentially hazardous, coastal flooding is expected or occurring. It's a notch below a coastal flood warning, which signals more severe and immediate threats. Still, it's not something to be taken lightly. Coastal flood advisories are triggered by a variety of factors. High tides, often amplified by full or new moon phases, can cause water levels to rise and breach coastal defenses. Storms, particularly those accompanied by strong winds, can whip up the sea, leading to storm surges that flood coastal areas. And let's not forget sea level rise, a slow but steady threat that's turning once safe coasts into vulnerable front lines. Now, you might think, I don't live near the coast, so this doesn't affect me. But here's the thing. Coastal flooding doesn't just impact beachfront properties and fishing villages. It can disrupt entire ecosystems, damage infrastructure, and displace communities. It's a chain reaction that can ripple through our economies and societies, affecting everyone in some way. Moreover, coastal flooding is becoming more frequent and severe due to climate change. As global temperatures rise, so do sea levels. This means that areas currently safe from coastal flooding may not remain so in the future. Coastal flood advisories, therefore, are not just warnings for those in immediate danger. They're reminders of the broader, long-term challenges we face in a warming world. So next time you hear of a coastal flood advisory, remember, it's not just about the here and now. It's a signal of the changes happening to our planet and a call to action for all of us. We need to understand, adapt, and mitigate, because ultimately, coastal flood advisories are not just for those living by the sea. They are a wake-up call for all of us. How can we predict something as unpredictable as the weather? This question might seem daunting, but the answer lies in the remarkable world of science and technology. Predicting floods, especially coastal ones, may seem like trying to read tea leaves in a swirling storm, but it's far from impossible. At the heart of flood prediction is meteorology, the scientific study of the atmosphere that focuses on weather processes and forecasting. Meteorologists are like detectives, piecing together clues from the air, land, and sea to predict when and where a flood might strike. They use sophisticated weather radar systems, satellites, and weather stations that measure things like rainfall, wind speed, and atmospheric pressure. But how does this data translate into a flood advisory or warning? Let's break it down. Forecasters use computer models that simulate the Earth's atmosphere and oceans. These models take in vast amounts of data, from temperature and humidity to wind speed and direction. With this information, the models can make predictions about future weather patterns, including the potential for heavy rain that could lead to flooding. But it's not just about predicting rain. Forecasters also need to understand the lay of the land. They need to know how quickly the ground can absorb water, which areas are prone to flooding, and where the water will go once it overflows. This is where Geographic Information Systems, or GIS, come into play. By combining weather data with GIS, forecasters can create detailed flood maps and issue timely advisories. But let's be clear, predicting floods is not an exact science. Meteorologists are often dealing with probabilities and uncertainties, and while technology has come a long way, there's still a lot we don't know about our complex weather systems. Yet the goal isn't to predict floods with 100% accuracy. Rather, it's about giving people enough time to prepare and potentially save lives. So while the weather may be unpredictable, with advances in science and technology, we can be better prepared. Predicting floods is not an exact science, but with advances in technology, we can be better prepared. The waters may recede, but the impact of coastal flooding lingers. When the tide rolls back, it leaves behind more than just dampened shores. It leaves a trail of devastation that spans across three major areas: the environment, the economy, and society. Let's start with the environment. Coastal flooding can be incredibly destructive to both terrestrial and marine ecosystems. It can alter landscapes, erode soil, and damage or destroy habitats. It can also introduce saltwater into freshwater systems, disrupting the delicate balance of life within. Not to mention, the increase in water volume can lead to excessive nutrient runoff, creating dead zones where aquatic life struggles to survive. Next, we turn to the economic impacts. Businesses, particularly those in the tourism and fishing industries, can suffer significant losses due to coastal flooding. Infrastructure such as roads, bridges, and buildings can be damaged or destroyed, leading to costly repairs and insurance claims. Plus, there's the cost of emergency response and recovery efforts, which can run into the billions. And finally, there's the societal impact. Lives are disrupted, homes are lost, and communities are displaced. The psychological toll can be just as devastating as the physical damage, as people grapple with the loss of their homes, livelihoods, and a sense of security. But here's where coastal flood advisories come in. They serve as an early warning system, giving people the time they need to prepare, respond, and hopefully lessen these impacts. They can help guide evacuation efforts, inform emergency response strategies, and even influence long-term planning and development. And while we can't stop the tides from rising, we can arm ourselves with knowledge and foresight. We can build resilience, adapt, and learn to live with the changing face of our coasts. The aftermath of coastal flooding is a stark reminder of our vulnerability to nature's fury. But it's also a call to action, a wake-up call that underscores the importance of heeding flood advisories, of understanding our environment, and of working together towards a more sustainable future. In the face of rising seas and intensifying storms, adaptation is our best defense. As we navigate our way through this new normal, our ability to adapt will determine how well we can mitigate the impact of coastal flooding. Adapting to increased coastal flooding requires a multifaceted approach. It's about improving our infrastructure, implementing flood protection measures, and creating robust disaster response plans. Firstly, we need to strengthen our infrastructure. That means reinforcing seawalls, raising buildings off the ground, and redesigning our cities to be more resilient to water. It's about making sure our roads, bridges, and utilities can withstand the onslaught of the sea. It's about creating a built environment that works with nature, not against it. Secondly, we need to implement flood protection measures. This could involve creating natural barriers like mangroves and coral reefs, which can absorb the force of waves and reduce erosion. It could also mean constructing man-made defenses like levees and dikes. But we must also remember that these measures need to be sustainable and not further damage our delicate ecosystems. Lastly, we need to have disaster response plans in place. These should be comprehensive, including early warning systems, evacuation routes, and emergency shelters. It's about ensuring that when the waters do rise, we are ready to respond quickly and effectively, minimizing loss of life and property. But adapting to coastal flooding isn't just about physical changes. It's also about changing our mindset. We need to accept that we can't control nature, but we can learn to live with it. We need to plan for the worst, but hope for the best. And we need to understand that even though we may not be able to stop the rising seas, we can take steps to lessen their impact. In the end, adapting to coastal flooding is not just about survival. It's about thriving in a changing world. It's about turning adversity into opportunity and uncertainty into resilience. It's about creating a future where we are not just surviving the rising tide, but riding it. Adapting to coastal flooding is not just about survival, it's about thriving in a changing world. The fight against climate change and coastal flooding is not just for scientists and policymakers, it's for all of us. This is a battle that requires our collective efforts, and there are simple actions we can all take to make a difference. Consider reducing your carbon footprint by embracing sustainable practices. This could be as easy as using public transportation, recycling, or even planting trees in your local community. Remember, even the smallest actions can have a significant impact when done collectively. Staying informed is also crucial. Understand the science behind climate change, be aware of its effects, and learn about the measures being taken to combat it. This knowledge empowers us to make informed decisions and to be proactive in adapting to these changes. In the face of climate change, it's the choices we make and the actions we take that will define our future. Every action counts in our collective fight against climate change and its impacts. Let's work together to protect our planet, our homes, and our future.